Well, what a weekend it was here in the great city of Manchester. Fantastic weekend. I met some wonderful people there, many of whom are listeners to this programme and came to the programme through their support of and their following of David Icke. Now, there's too many to mention, so rather than offend anybody, I'm not going to go into mentioning people, except to say Steve from Middlesbrough, who I had a long chat with late Saturday afternoon during a break, and fascinating guy, really, really funny guy, whom is from Middlesbrough, born and bred, big West Ham fan, strangely enough, and he asked me would I say hello to him. So Steve, I'm a man of my word. Nice to chat with you. I met some wonderful people, I really did. Amazing day. The atmosphere was incredible. It was electric. Nearly 3,000 sellout of the Apollo, the O2 Apollo Theatre in Manchester, and there were several, I thought, throughout the day, many people came along hoping to pick up a ticket. In fact, there were many people who turned up on the day hoping to get a ticket or to pick up any spares. Such was the interest in that in this great city where I think it's fair to say David Icke is very fond of it, and the warmth and the energy of the city and the compassion of the people here, the friendliness of the people here. It's so much different up north. There's no doubt about that. How does David Icke stand there for 10.5 hours without notes? Very, very rarely saying something that he'd said earlier, only when it's important to reinforce a point. How does he do that? I have no idea. It was the fourth time that I've seen David stand in front of an audience for that length of time. I have no idea. It is, I think, the 8th wonder of the world, or the 9th wonder of the world. My tongue is not up his arse. There is nothing like that in the world ever. I've been making radio programmes for donkey's years. I used, obviously, from a very mainstream and a very commercial background. Whatever I might have thought about this information many years ago, I would have had grudging admiration if I'd ever seen anything like that. How do you do that? With a couple of thousand images and some videos, how do you do that? How do you hold the audience in the palm of your hand for that length of time? I don't know. I don't think he knows either. What I'm going to say next sounds a bit negative, but it isn't negative. It's positive at all. I don't do negativity anymore. I'm removing negativity from my life. There was zero coverage of that event in the Manchester press. Zero. And I scoured the pages of the commercial radio stations in Manchester, of which there are many, and there was no coverage of it. None whatsoever. And there will be none in Ireland, where he'll be this coming Saturday at the Helix Theatre, which I believe is now sold out. There'll be none. Channel 4 News rang Jamie and got in touch with David last week before the Manchester event. They wanted to do an interview with David, and there was something about, I think one of the reporters, something about it smelled of a kind of a set-up job, that it was going to be one of those hatchet job or hit pieces on David. What was interesting about that, I think around about that time, the Apollo Theatre were contacted by a gentleman representing a group who said or say that they're anti-Semitism and racism, and threatened the Apollo about reporting them and saying they had observers in the audience and threatening a protest and all of that, none of which materialised. I don't believe there's any coincidences around these things. I don't believe there was any coincidence in the Guardian newspaper asking questions about that and trying to get an interview. This is the negativity. And I'll tell you why I think why the media is behaving like this. Why it's completely ignoring David Icke. I mean, this is a major story. You know, a man rocks into a city. He's very famous from presenting sports and news for the BBC for many years. He's famous for going off the deep end in the early 1990s, Wogan and all of that. He's a household name, not only in this country. So the complete lack of media coverage is incredibly telling. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about it whatsoever. Well, I suppose I'll stick with that theme for a minute, you know, why they're doing what they're doing. I believe it's because he continues to walk, in my opinion, on the very, very outer limits of the cutting edge of conspiracy research. He does. while many of his contemporaries, and I was thinking about this today, have either succumbed to fatigue, which is forgivable, hopelessness, equally forgivable, indifference, maybe not so forgivable, or worse, they've gone 180 degrees and they've thrown in their lot with politicians like Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn, and now Donald Trump. And much of what David spoke about on Saturday, again, these researchers and these content creators, they just won't go down these roads for fear of ridicule or, again, for fear of losing sponsors. There's no doubt about that. And back to the media ignoring of him. Again, and I was thinking about what I would say here. When David gets to talking about the Archon entities who manifest themselves and appear to us in different forms, in a reptilian form, these are the entities who trapped humanity into the 5 cents even, our 5 cents perception of reality, manipulating our reality. These ancient entities who have basically blinded us to the real world. Okay, locked us into this holographic, you could call it a matrix, you could call it a holographic universe, this program, and have built this dystopian society around it. And I think because presentations like David's, and there aren't any presentations like David, it's unique in human history, it's unique. Nobody has ever done anything like it, and I doubt anybody will ever do anything like it again. Because he juxtaposes fact, okay, he explains what's gone on here using historical fact, using documentation, and using hard evidence to support it. At the same time, juxtaposing that with geopolitical events which are happening right now. And this is what grabs people in, you see. The brilliance of this. And in my opinion, this is why the media, and of course I'm fascinated by the media. I came from the media. I was created, I suppose. You know, my adult life was shaped by my experience of working in commercial media. This is why they won't go there. This is why they won't go anywhere near talking about him and reporting on these events. They can't do it. They can't do it. It's as simple as that. You know, I was thinking yesterday, it doesn't matter anymore. I think he said that at some stage during the day. It no longer matters because the centre, it's not so much the centre can no longer hold, the centre has just collapsed away from these media organisations. And he talked about how, you know, people are seeing through it to the point where they are backing people like Jeremy Corbyn on one side of the political spectrum, and on the other side are backing Donald Trump, and they might be misguided, but as he said, it's a primal scream because people they are at their wits' end, they are angry, they are outraged, they are struggling to cope with what's going on and beginning to realise that there is the explanation to it might not be in the realms of the physical anymore, or the easily explicable, the easily explained. And maybe in the future, people will move away. I think we're very close to people moving away from choosing a politician and believing that politician speaks to them and is speaking for them. And David is so undogmatic. He's so brilliant with that. He's so open-minded. You know, he's so fair, unlike, you know, others that I could mention, including myself. Maybe I'm very hostile when it comes to talking about people who support Trump and others. He takes the wider, broader view of it and sees the positives in it. It was just outstanding again on Saturday. It was different again to the time I saw him in Amsterdam not long before Christmas. It's an evolving talk, packed out with people whom I was speaking to. And a question I kept asking people out of curiosity throughout the day, and many people have said this on Facebook, so I'm not making this up. I said to people late on in the day, long day you see, and I said, is it too long for you? Is it difficult now at this stage to hold on to your concentration and follow it? And to a man and woman, I think 99% of people I asked said, no, it's not. And there was only one guy who said it was difficult, Richie, but then he said I probably should have stayed in the city overnight. I got up very early. in the morning to come down from Glasgow. And there's only a bit of fatigue now, but he said, I'm still rooted to it. That's an extraordinary thing to talk for that length of time. Knit all these strands together. Going back thousands of years, the Gnostics, their evaluation of and their writing about and their discovery of the Archon entities and what they were doing and bringing it all in. There's one thing I wanted to say as well on that. I had a pleasant and a polite conversation with a lady today. I think she's based in Dublin. And she was very quick when a friend of mine was talking about her very positive experience of the event on Saturday. She was very quick to jump in with lizards and reptilians and stuff like that, and very dismissive. So I very politely said, look, are you a believer in God? Do you believe that God divided himself into three and sent his son, which is him, down to earth to be tortured to death as a condition of forgiving our sins? Now, I wasn't being sarcastic or cheeky, and I did say to the lady, look, I'm being very respectful here. And it was a two-part question. I said, are you somebody who believes that? And if not, you will have many friends and family and people like that who will believe that. Do you dismiss out of hand everything else they say or do, based on you just can't fathom or can't understand why they believe in the God whom you go to church every Sunday and you eat his flesh and he was tortured for our sins and all of that story, which I don't believe in personally? And she came back and gave me a couple of, non-answers. So the only thing that does get me down every now and then, I mean, I've got friends and family whom will say things like, I'm not interested in that because I don't get all this interdimensional entities and the manipulation. I don't get any of that stuff on reptilians. I can't. So there's no way I'm going to listen to any of that. And that pisses me off. And I was thinking, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you can't paint everybody with the same brush. I was thinking, look, a lot of people, I think, at least some people I know, are very nervous about exposing themselves to a day like that. Nervous because they think to themselves, well, I wonder if I started to, I wonder if I went there, I wonder would I hear things I don't want to hear, I wonder would I understand that? Would it make sense to me in some way? Now, I'm not saying they think this out loud, it's a subconscious thing, and in some way then would that be very difficult to deal with going forward? And I think there's a lot of that, Look, it was absolutely outstanding here. It was acclaimed by everybody who came to Manchester and who spent nearly 12 hours watching it and who left. And it's like, again, the big elephant in the room. World famous conspiracy researcher, world famous television presenter comes into a city, speaks to thousands of people, puts on an amazing event, and not a dicky bird, not a whisper from the mainstream media. And the reason the mainstream media are terrified of David Icke is because I believe, and I said this actually to David, I tried to say this on Saturday and I made a balls of it because I was nervous. I introduced Gareth, and before that I said a couple of things about David, but I was nervous because it's been a long time since I stood in front of a big crowd. What I wanted to say was, I believe David Icke's journey is only beginning. And again, that's not in any way sycophantic or in any way brown-nosing. I believe he's only started. For me, the last 27 years of his life have been a journey to a major outpost, like a space station of some description. And there is the Enterprise or the Millennium Falcon. I'm using metaphors here. And he's now behind the controls of this vehicle. And where he goes from here is going to be incredibly exciting. That's what I feel. And I didn't say that very well on Saturday. He's out on his own now. Like I said, the contemporaries and, they've disappeared by the wayside, many of them, and he's out on his own, right on the cutting edge of stuff that most people are terrified of speaking with. If you're going to the Helix on Saturday, you're going to see something that's going to change your mind if you don't know a lot about any of this. And many people turning up on Saturday, first-time visitors to an event like that, and had never really delved into some of the deeper stuff about the nature of reality. And many of those people I spoke to were saying to me, look, this makes sense to me now. I understand that because the way it's presented. The Helix is sold out, I believe. Do go to theworldwidewakeup.com because there you'll see where David is going to be over the course of 2017. And if he's coming to a city or a town or to your country, again, I can't recommend highly enough. You spend a few bucks, and not a lot of bucks either, and go and spend a day with him. It's extraordinary. It is exactly 20 minutes past the hour. This is the Richie Allen Show, brought to you in association with Fab Radio 2, alternatecurrentradio.com. Do check that out. The TuneIn app, and of course, we're on davidicke.com. Do check out davidicke.com/headlines. Again, I can't recommend that highly enough. Now, Gerald Salente will be with us in a couple of minutes' time. Before that, though, I'm going to take a very quick break. Won't be long. Back in a minute.